Hi, I'm James Stephanie Sterling, and this is the door that I went through this weekend. Right through it. So yeah, a bit of an interesting weekend for me. I went through a table as well. I've got footage of that. I don't have the door yet.
I have a weird strategy.
Ow. But on to a more painful matter. Video game user reviews. And sex. Hot, painful sex.
For the game to put more emphasis on genitals than facial construction and body styles. Unreal. I understand they are trying to push all the political wokeness and racy envelopes possible, but this game is a hot pile of garbage compared to older games. I would rather play Skyrim again, because the level of polish between a 15-year-old game and this new one is unquestionable. Fucking Bethesda game more polished. What are they on? Please spend more time creating robust storylines and different character creation options without jumping directly on the flavour of the year garbage train. What a loser! A few months ago, the gamers were pissing their diapers over the confirmation that long-running Guilty Gear character Bridget was trans. The anger, the expressions of betrayal, the people terrified they were gay because they'd been jerking off to Bridget for years. I was an authority on gayness, I can confirm that that does make you gay. If you've ever jerked it to Bridget, if you've ever had a boner playing Guilty Gear, if you've ever had just that little pulse of blood going through your cock while looking at a picture of Bridget, you are totes gay, utterly butterly gay, totes my goats gay, totally gay, confirmed gay, or not. Maybe you're not. Either way, jerking off over a cartoon of what you thought was a girl doesn't really say anything, other than the fact that you like jerking off over cartoons. Which is fine.
Masturbation can't hurt you physically or make you insane or anything like that.
Anyway, all the panicking was honestly fucking funny. It was the denial that entertained me the most. The people frantically talking in circles and clutching at straws for any evidence to the contrary, any explanation that concluded Bridget was not, in fact, trans. There were claims that Guilty Gear's creator was mistranslated or misunderstood, or had in fact been somehow mistaken himself when he confirmed Bridget's transness, despite him emphatically and amusingly smacking down any such claims. At the time, my response to the denials and the dismay was combative, antagonistic, and unhelpfully mocking, typified as it was by this picture I started posting. And I'd just like to say from the bottom of my heart that I have no regrets. Those who didn't care for what I was doing criticised me for not contributing anything worthwhile to the discussion. And that stuck with me because, well, that was the point, darling. I didn't want to contribute anything worthwhile to the debate about Bridget because capital G gamers creaming their jeans in outrage over their inability to handle the existence of a trans person isn't a worthwhile discussion to begin with. Responding with memes just telling them to suck it is immature, puerile, and vapid, and it's exactly the level of maturity and dignity these fucking imbeciles deserve. I've been dealing with these contrived outrages from the cishets for over a fucking decade now, and I am over affording them the respect of a reasonable rebuttal. As I've said in the past, I remember how the gamer bros reacted when it was revealed that a bit part NPC in Dragon Age Inquisition was trans. One very minor character who just happened to be transmasc, and BioWare was told off for pandering. Because having a 99% cishet cast is totally normal and not pandering at all, but just one sliver of an appearance by someone who isn't cishet, or as they'd put it, normal, was considered an egregious step too far, and I'm supposed to treat people who think like that with reason? These aren't reasonable people. They're literally angry because they had to see a trans person for a minute. I don't care if I'm not winning hearts and minds by telling these people to suck it, because their hearts are shriveled and their minds are leaking bags of garbage. I don't want to win those. I want to dump them in a bin where they belong. I'm bringing this up now because, as the quote earlier suggests, the same predictable tantrum is being thrown over Baldur's Gate 3. The same pathetic routine we always get, and yet again my instinct is to treat it not with counterpoints, not with rational arguments, but with vicious mockery and hideous laughter. That kind of laughter. Was this game written by a bunch of teenagers that giggle at every mention of sex? Can a person ever talk to anyone without being propositioned? Probably the most perverted game I have ever seen, and so many have defended this, which is very worrisome. I know I will get the unhelpful check for this review, but being honest will get you that if you are not in the majority. If you are a pervert and like cutscenes, then this game is for you. For me, I have come out of my mother's basement, so this isn't exciting to me. Gameplay is slow, dialogues are written poorly, the character creator is absolutely disgusting. I really hope the people that voted for this woke nest are bots if they aren't stopped with this hype. It only ruins the industry. There's no gender selection anymore, just identity and body type. In other words, Larian is now most definitely an AAA studio, and no doubt has some new employees to help them out in understanding what really means in modern gaming. What? Boring combat system, uninteresting companions, terrible location design. SJW. The game is very depraved. I mean, seriously, get a load of these sad fucking bitches, will you? Can you actually imagine being so deeply fucking weird that you hate an otherwise fantastic game because its character creator lets you put a dick on a girl? Can you imagine being that scared of it? And I've seen people swear they'll never play it, denying themselves one of the most impressive RPGs of all time because they're so overly sensitive, so plain weak, that their little heart can't handle knowing a trans person could hypothetically be made in somebody else's playthrough, or that a boy can kiss a boy with dialogue options that nobody is forced to engage with. It's the same braying we saw with the gay romance options in Mass Effect. I mean, as miserable as it is to consider that level of hatred and ignorance existing, it's hard not to find their self-defeat and feeble oversensitivity fucking funny. This insecure and twisted little mindset is experienced by a significant number of alleged gamers, so poisoned by their own hatred that it's become an obsession for them. I've lost count of the number of times I've seen commenters on Twitter or the Steam forums asking if a game they're interested in is woke before they buy it because they're that laughably terrified of potential exposure to someone who isn't white and cishet. It's the first thing at the forefront of these people's minds now, so utterly possessed by prejudice as they are. They don't care whether or not a game is fun, whether or not a game is made well, but whether or not it's nebulously woke. It's fucking unsettling how fixated on wokeness they are, and the implications for what they want out of society with this is downright threatening, but all I want to do is make fun of these absolute rifles. The regressive reactionaries have become so fucking routine and predictable that it's almost tragic. Literally, any time a new piece of nerd-focused media comes out, you need only wait a matter of minutes before the alt-right outrage machine whirs into gear as agitators and grifters scour it for signs of so-called wokeness to terrify their audiences with. Wokeness that always boils down to a gay or a person of colour appearing in it for a few minutes. Oh, and sometimes just cis women as well. If a woman looks strong in any way for even a moment, it's gone away. These fucking clowns lost their shit over that Lord of the Rings show not having an all-white cast. And the blink and you'll miss it queer couple in Buzz Lightyear sustained anti-woke grifters on social media for fucking weeks. That last one was so absurd as to border on self-parody, as the content we're talking about, a practical background occurrence easily able to be censored for certain territories, because of course, was so incredibly minimal, not just in contrast to the hysteria it caused, but just fucking minimal in general. But that's the level of irrational, frothing hatred we're dealing with here. Our existence as queers is such a raw nerve to these bloody crybabies that they can't take us. They can't handle us for a few seconds. It's quite empowering in a way.
Summer night, ocean paradise, whale calls.
No. White noise is fine.
Very well.
Good night, Socks.
Good night, Buzz.
Is this video game woke?
I've made this point before. I get people on social media, I get people coming into my comments saying the most disgusting, hateful, violent things they can to try and get under my skin. But nothing they can say will ever upset me as much as me simply breathing upsets them. That's a lot of power to give a girl, and they get on their knees offering it freely. And you should see how desperately some of the wankers want to intellectualize their outrage too, because they're so cowardly they can't outright admit their hatred. In user reviews for Baldur's Gate 3, this phenomenon has manifested in a curiously puritanical attitude. Take the one lengthy post complaining about the egregious amount of sex that does nothing to further immerse you in the game world or plot. It's simultaneously less believable than a harem anime and more grotesque than pornography. Honey, the amount of sex you can have in this game might be unbelievable to you, but I think that just speaks to your own experiences. For some of us, the amount of sex in Baldur's Gate 3 is downright conservative compared to real life. Me, some of us is me. Look, I know that for the average cis-het, this much sex can seem like an overload. Statistically speaking, the average time spent having sex for cis-het couples is said to be 7 minutes in total, which is of course fine. As someone who tried to make a cis-het relationship work before, I can confirm that it's a relatively brief, silent, terrifying affair, but darling, when I make the occasional reference in my videos to fucking for hours at a time, I'm not exaggerating for dramatic or comedic effect. I am being quite literal. All I'll say is this: maybe it's the hormones, maybe it's the fact queer sex is just way more adventurous and fun, or maybe it's all just down to good old-fashioned self-confidence, but I'm better with my dick as a girl than I ever was as a bloke. What I absolutely adore about this particular novel of a review is how in one section it whines about the game having an egregious amount of sex and being more grotesque than pornography, while another section complains people play and read fantasy as escapism, not to be moralized at by kindergartners. It's an interesting choice to cry about moralizing, while at the same time clutching chaste and sexless pearls, and climbing a righteous high horse about sex, especially when your idea of moralization is acknowledging the existence of LGBTQ plus people and suggesting that maybe bigotry is a bit shit. It's always been funny. People like this love to claim that the left are easily offended snowflakes who are against free speech, all while expressing utter outrage at the mere existence of a queer person in media. These people ignore that, historically, it's always been the right wing that sought to censor art. Let's not forget the Daily Mail's famous headline, "Ban this sick filth." Let's not forget the amount of times Christian fundamentalists on the religious right have threatened and harassed people into silence, campaigned to censor media, and, quite fucking pertinently, started the satanic panic that sought to eradicate Dungeons and Dragons, the very thing upon which Baldur's Gate is based and hundreds of video games have been influenced by. Trans people especially get accused of making unreasonable demands and trying to silence free speech, all while the gender-critical movement, explicitly funded by the far right, organised boycotts of companies like Costa Coffee for the grave crime of featuring one single trans person in an advert, to hypocrisy around censorship, the willful ignorance of who has done more to censor media than any other group.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
It's just very telling. Remember when I alluded to a character being trans in my Vampire Survivors bestiary, and within literally 45 minutes of it coming out, the gamer's TM modded the description out of the game and replaced it with a transphobic tirade about me. These are the people who love talking about respecting artistic vision when it comes to offensive content, but as soon as one little thing offends them, they immediately set about covering it up, silencing it, burying it, censoring it. All this shit dribbling from the lip-quivering mouths of people who defended sexual content for years, who got angry at the idea of dead or alive beach volleyball not being released in the West, who labelled so-called SJWs a bunch of snowflakes for suggesting this zombie-ravaged bikini body was a bit of a creepy thing to put in Dead Island Special Edition. Suddenly, the free speech-loving champions of offensive content want to bitch that a game's too sexy. Forgive me if I treat the concept with the cynicism it deserves. One review complained that the game was packed with, and I quote, weird and dirty stuff. The gamers TM are putting on the performance of a lifetime right now. To reiterate, Baldur's Gate 3 is nowhere near as sex-stuffed as it's made out to be. It just so happens that a lot of the sex can be queer, including a canon lesbian couple who are quite open about the fact that they're going to be all over each other the moment they're alone. It's actually quite funny and adorable, if you're not a Puritan bigot with unhealthy attitudes towards sex, of course. No, there isn't too much sex in BG3, but these people perceive it as a game that never shuts up about sex, because it's all that their obsessive, laser-focused minds want to see. Speaking as a right proper queerbo, it's a common reaction we get. Just recently, I got a comment on YouTube from someone expressing their anger at the fact that every episode I make of this show is 99% about my gender and sexuality. For added hilarity, they posted it as a reply to a video in which neither my gender or sexuality was mentioned even once. But that's the point. When people like that see me, all they see is a queer. They don't even see a person. They see a tranna, a gay, a walking, talking concept. And the only way they can process that is to blame me, to accuse me of talking about it too much, so that it's my fault that it's all they can see. Look, I won't deny, I talk about being trans a lot. Transitioning was one of the happiest, most positive things I've ever done in my fucking life, and I like to express that joy. I'm proud of how big and awesome HRT made my tits. I'm thrilled with my confidence. I enjoy very much making jokes about all this stuff, because I find it fun, and I believe representation in media is fucking important, so absolutely I'm loudly and proudly queer. But to say it's all I talk about, that I shove it down your throat, as they love to say, is intellectually dishonest and, well, honestly, it says so much more about you than me, darling. You can tell a lot about a throat based on what it can't swallow. The amount of sex jokes and sexuality in my work hasn't even really increased from before I transitioned, but the perception of it sure fucking has. And I'll add this too. I'm just as likely to start ranting tangentially about Manta Force as I am about being trans, and nobody says I'm shoving Manta Force down their throats. In any case, the trans joy will continue. Suck it. There's only one part of all this I'll touch with a serious stick, and it's the inevitable retort that I'm making fun of these would-be boycotters despite refusing to play that wizard game. This gross oversimplification of the situation will fail to note the key difference, which is that the wizard game directly benefits an evil fascist twat, who quite fittingly hates trans people and expresses outrage at seeing them with the same exclusionary fervour as the very people we've talked about today, only with the power and the influence to spur on a terrifyingly effective hate movement. It's a bit different from a video game letting you pop a dick and tits on the same collection of pixels. In it. Anyway, the point is, Bridget is trans. Suck it.
It's the extra poo that makes all the difference.
As alluded to towards the end of the video, the same attitude that is having user reviews complain about woke content and depravity and egregious sex that's worse than pornography, and the TERFs, the gender criticals, the people who want to protect women's spaces by banning trans people from everywhere, these are the same attitudes. And it's another reason why I am not ever going to get into a rational debate with any of these wankers whining and trying to engage in denial about, like, Bridget being trans. Or the person who said of the bestiary, the Vampire Survivors bestiary. No, it's not saying Giovanna's trans. It's an allegory. Assigned mage at birth is an allegory. Yes, it's an allegory. For being trans. It is all part and parcel the same attitude, and I don't want to give it credence anymore, because these people can say, oh, I have no problem with trans people, I have no problem with gay people, I just don't want it shoved down my throat. And their definition for being shoved down their throat is them having to see it. Therefore, their problem is the idea of tolerating its existence, because if something is allowed to exist publicly, there is a chance you're going to see it. And if you've got a problem with that, you've got a problem seeing it. And if you've got a problem seeing it, you've got a problem with it existing. Thank God for me.